everyone, it's Bob McCranie with Texas Pride Realty, brokered by HomeSmart Stars, and we are continuing the Flee Red States blog today. And today we have Cassie, and Cassie has a great bit of information that we're going to be talking about as far as immigrating and getting to a safer space. And also, I have the joy of I'm going to be sharing the stage with Cassie in a few weeks at the San Antonio at the Expatsi conference, and I'm so looking forward to sharing the same space with you and getting to tell our stories together. So, Cassie, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody about you?
Hi, I'm Cassie. My family and I moved from the US to Uruguay in 2023. So we've been here, I don't know, 19 months or so. Um, we left Texas, which was a very hostile state towards trans people, and a member of our family is trans. So we had to leave, and I don't know why, but in 2023, even I just had this premonition like, I think Trump's going to win, and we should, if we're going to put all the money and everything into leaving Texas already, we might as well just go to a new country. So that is what we decided to do. We found a country that seems safe to us, and we have had an excellent experience.
So you said seems safe to you. Tell me what that means to you.
So I always look at, especially for trans people, because that they seem to be the particular group that's spotlighted right now by the hateful people. I kind of broke it into three segments. So the first one is legality. And so I wanted to move somewhere where the law not only allows for, gender affirming care medically and changing your name and et cetera, et cetera. Not just allowed it, but like guaranteed it. There was a proactive law protecting the rights of trans people. And so Uruguay has a law like that was passed in 2018. So legally, it's pretty solid here. Then culturally is the next part, because as we've seen, like even in the US, something can be culturally or something can be legally okay, but then if the culture shifts, that can change pretty quickly. So I think it's really important to evaluate culture, the cultural beliefs of wherever you are. And then third was medical care and access to medical care. And not only is it legal, but does it exist? Are there clinics? Are there enough clinics to service the population? So that was kind of my like three-pronged approach to choosing a country. And then out of the countries that fit those three things, Uruguay was the easiest to immigrate to. So we were like, well, let's try that first and hope we like it. And luckily we have loved it.
Tell people a little bit who maybe don't know geography that well, where Uruguay is, and a little bit about what it's like to live there. I mean, I know I could go get a nice condo or something. Tell me what it's like to live there, the temperatures, the attractions. We're all
Yeah.
dealing with U.S. public educations, and that would be something we'd want to know.
Yeah. So a lot of people use Uruguay as like the example of a country that's so far away and that nobody knows about. It is in South America. If you kind of imagine the top and then the very bottom tip, Tierra del Fuego of South America. Uruguay is between Argentina and Brazil. So a lot of times people will hear that it's in South America and they're thinking like tropics, but we're actually so far south that we have a very temperate climate. So the latitude, like equivalent in the US, is like Memphis, Tennessee. So we're not in the tropics. We have 4 seasons. The nice thing is it doesn't get too hot or too cold. Like it's very temperate. I really like the climate here. The size of the whole country is about the size of Missouri, and the population of the entire country is 3.3 million. So I always like to explain to people because I lived in Houston before coming here, and I'm like, it's the whole country is half the population of Houston. Like it's a pretty small country. Um, but yeah, it's like I said, temperate here in South America between two big neighbors, but somehow it's kind of carved out this. It serves as the buffer zone between those two big giants. So it's kind of like sometimes referred to as the Switzerland of South America, because it's like the neutral zone where everybody behaves.
Do you, thank you. That's honestly just the way you describe it sounds so fun. And I think whenever you say it's half the size of Houston for the whole country, that really puts it into perspective because Houston is huge. And I'm just imagining being able to drive across this country in an hour because that's how long it takes you to get through Houston if you're lucky. So,
I should clarify, the population is half the size of Houston. The geography of the country itself is about the size of Missouri.
okay, yes.
So
So,
Montevideo has half the population in just this city, and I have friends who are who live in San Francisco, and they said it's about the size of San Francisco. So if
wow.
that helps people kind of gauge what we're talking about here.
I think it does because it's easier to put into perspective. If you've ever been to those places, or for people that are in the States, this is flea red states. So people are going to want to have questions. We are not a country. We are a very egocentric country. So we don't know a lot about other countries, especially in South America. So
Yeah.
with that though, what is one thing? So, going from such a large city to a small country, what has really been kind of the biggest difference you've noticed?
Yeah, and I think this is going to change depend on where somebody moves because here in Uruguay, we have whatever you're looking for in terms of if you want to live in an urban atmosphere. If you live in Montevideo, you can live in a walkable, high rises, urban city. You can go out to Carrasco where there's like suburbs. And then you can go out to the more rural areas. The interior is the most famous export of Uruguay is beef. So I think there's like 4 cows for every human in this country. It's
Wow.
like a big ranch, So it actually kind of feels like Texas when you get into the interior in a weird way. We went to Minas for the holidays and it was like the Texas Hill Country. Like it looked exactly, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm at home. um, so the shift for us was we in San Antonio and Houston, we kind of lived in like suburbs, kind of that zone between urban and suburb is where we always kind of like to live in the US. So you still need a car, like it's very car centric. Where we live here, we don't have any vehicles. They have excellent public transport here. And almost everything I need is within like 4 or 5 blocks. So we mostly walk everywhere. And then I take a bus to work because it's about 15 minutes away. But like the bus comes every 7 minutes and the bus stop is like downstairs. So when I want to go to work, I just kind of like get ready, run downstairs, and I'm there pretty quickly. Versus having to maintain a car, have a garage, you know, I hate cars. Like I am passionately hate driving. So that's been the best part about moving here for me, honestly.
When you
So
live in a
you move.
connected area, sorry, Leslie, when you live in a connected area, you will suddenly realize what you've been dealing with. It, why am I sitting in 45 minutes to Dallas Fort Worth to get across the street is 45 minutes with traffic? It's literally that silliness. And we're all sitting in our big metal cars, running our engines, or even if we're electric, why? I I love walking. I love transportation. I love the bus. I love whatever it is I can take as far as it's cheaper and it's freeing to
Yeah.
do that. And if you've never lived in that, you just don't know what you're missing. Sorry, Leslie, go ahead.
You talked about, kind of the adjustments you made, things you had to get used to. What about your children? How is it? What's the experience been like for them?
So I think they've had a good experience. The thing is that people here are really, really kind, like just culturally, and the children are really, really kind. And so my kids immediately had many friends. Like and they didn't speak Spanish, and we like dumped them in the public school. We were like, figure it out, trial by fire, go in, figure it out. And they literally, we taught them to say, "Puedo jugar contigo?" Like, can I play with you? Was the first thing and we were like, just learn this one phrase. And then if people are playing football or they're playing whatever, just walk up and say this. And they did that in the park by our house and in the school. And I mean, the kids here just completely were like, yeah, of course, and so they've had a really good experience. And I think people are a lot more open here. And I really can't tell you why. I don't know if it's just the culture is to be welcoming and kind and generous. And maybe because it's such a small country, like even though we live in this big urban environment, I see the same people every day because we're all walking around. I was recently on crutches, and like the day I got off crutches, I was just walking around without them, and like every person I passed was like, Cassie, no crutches. Yeah, good for you. I'm just like, okay, so everybody knows everybody, so you can't be a jerk. Like you have to get along because everybody knows everybody. You know what I mean? It's a small enough country where I don't know, maybe that's it.
And how
They
about
they've
the
been great.
education? How about the education
Yeah.
for your children? How is that different or better or worse?
So the nice thing is that what they would absolutely tell you is the best thing is that elementary school here in the public system is only 4 hours per day. So I know. So they go from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., which means that they get to sleep in, they wake up. There's no alarms in our house. Like, well, there are for me because I work, but they get to sleep in. They do their homework in the morning when they're fresh and happy. We have a big lunch, and then I walk them down the street to school for 4 hours. So it's a really lovely uh, mix. Like 4 hours is not overwhelming, and I feel like as a mom in the US, the year that they were in public school, because we did pandemic parenting, so their journey is kind of like all over the place. But the year we did public school in the US, I was always sad because I was like, you're gone all day. Like I missed your whole day. I didn't get to see you until like the 2 hours before dinner and bedtime. So I love it here too, but we all get to spend a good amount of time together, but they're still getting a really high quality education.
Now, most people,
That
when they're deciding to move across the country or even around the world, something triggers that. And you kind of touched on it earlier about the laws changing in Texas and the United States. What was your real trigger point? What was like, we're doing this right now?
Yeah. So you might remember that back in 2022 in February, Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, unilaterally decided and announced that he was going to send Child Protective Services after families who were affirming their trans children. And that was a terrifying day. It was a horrible day because, when there's an announcement like that, you just don't know what's going to happen. Like the uncertainty really permeates everything about the situation. And so, we all immediately were like, what do we do? How do we prepare? In our case, we had an attorney that if CPS like went to the school, here, give them this card. This is our attorney, and don't talk to them, you know. And that was just such an extreme moment to have to explain to my child, because she was very fortunate in that in San Antonio, we were in this nice little bubble where everybody was affirming and accepting, and she never had really any idea that it was even something that anybody would hate. Like she just had no idea. We had created this sweet little bubble for her. And so that was the moment where I had to explain to her like the reality of the situation and say, here's your laminated card with the lawyer's number. And if somebody comes to talk to you, you give them this card, don't say anything. And it was heartbreaking. She said to me, I can try really hard not to be trans anymore. And, that was hard. And so I think my husband and I looked at each other. We were like, okay, so we're leaving, right? Like, obviously, we're not going to stay in this. We're lucky that we have the means that we could leave. So that's the moment that we were like, we have to start charting our course to get out. And it took us 18 months because we had to switch careers. I had to close a business. Like, it was a process. It didn't happen overnight for us. But that was the very moment that we were like, we're not going to live like this. We're not going to live in fear that somebody can knock on the door, And so.
Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing that vulnerability, because you and your husband are part of the difference that's being made in young LGBTQ, specifically trans children's lives, that gives me chills. Because whenever you're young, you shouldn't have to be like, I can just not be myself and we'll be okay. And when you're a child, you really don't realize when you're saying that, but as an adult to hear that, it's like, no, you deserve the world, baby. And you are parents that are giving your daughter that chance to live her authentic self. And so, yeah, that whole thing just gave me chills. Thank you very much for your vulnerability and for
Yeah, and
protecting
it
your
was
daughter.
actually, I kind of wanted to shake the conservatives because in our case, we were being very, um, like she didn't even know the word transgender. We didn't label her that. We were just like, oh yeah, you want to wear whatever clothes you want, whatever. We were just being very fluid. Like, you're a kid, we're just gonna kind of let you figure this out and let you know that we love you no matter like what you wear, or, we don't care about any of that. And so she was kind of just navigating, she's just doing whatever felt right, right? And that they made us explain to her, this is what transgender is, you're a part of this community, da 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 da. They caused that. And, and it makes me so mad because I'm like, we were trying to do what I think you would want, which is not label her and be very like fluid. And you're causing us to have to explain this to her with your
So,
hatred. Like, it just
so
doesn't
one
make
of the things that
sense.
the conservatives will say is, well, how do we explain two men or two women or trans people to our children? Well, they're literally having you explain to your children, being terrified of the state coming and taking them away, being terrified to be the person that they are. They have no qualms with you having to explain very large
Mhm.
worldly issues to your small child to keep them from having to explain normal human issues to their child.
Yeah,
We cannot
it's all,
explain the civil rights movement to a child, but we have to explain to a child who's BIPOC what they can and can't do in white society or straight society or whatever society. This is the cognitive disconnect that I see in their argument is it's okay if we have to go through the struggles with our families and our people so that they don't have to go through any struggles at all or to
yeah,
recognize their role in any of those struggles.
yeah, it's baffling. I'm very happy not to have to live in that anymore.
So let's get back to Uruguay for a second here. Tell me about the exchange rate and the currency there.
The currency here is pesos, Uruguayan pesos. It shifts over time like anything, but right now it's about 42 pesos to $1. Uruguay's currency is very stable. It is known as where other wealthy South Americans and other countries put their money in Uruguay because it's stable. Um, and that kind of builds the stability, because nobody wants Uruguay to get unstable, because whether you're Brazilian or Argentinian or Colombian, whoever you are, everybody wants Uruguay to stay stable because they've got like their real estate and their money here.
Good to
You
know.
mentioned like it's like Switzerland of South America. Same,
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
What about your family, the rest of your family, larger parents, sisters, brothers? How did they handle you and your family making a decision for y'all to go somewhere and be safe?
It was really funny because we, we were planning to leave Texas, and then we kind of realized in 2023, yeah, I think we're just gonna leave the whole country. And I was considering places, and then we settled on Uruguay. And I'm like literally telling my whole family and friend group, like, hey, we're moving in September, like we're leaving the country. And my sister called me like 2 months before, and I was like, why isn't anybody coming to see us or anything? And she was like, they don't believe that you're going. And I'm like, well, I am going. We have the ticket. It's like, I've done all this work. We're selling all of our stuff. And she's like, I've been telling them that you're definitely going because of who you are as a person, but they just don't believe. And like both sides of our family kind of did that until literally the last like 3 weeks. And then everybody was like making the drive over to see us to say goodbye and help us. Like we moved here with suitcases, so we gave away all of our stuff. So like, of course, we gave it away to family and stuff. But it literally took our family seeing us literally emptying out our house and giving away all our stuff for them to be like, oh, you're actually going to do this. And it's like, well, we gave you a year to prepare yourself, but I don't know. They didn't want to believe. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it wasn't their reality. That's the
Right.
thing is, even though you're like, this is what's happening. The fire is hot. We're leaving. And the family's like, well, but is it hot? Because they're not having to directly deal with it. And
Right.
so seeing you actually moving, that's what impacted them. And so again, oftentimes people have no idea what issues anyone's dealing with, why they're fleeing, whatever reasons for security are unique to that family, and it's not anyone to judge. But until you have to do it yourself, it's easier to be like, oh, I can't believe somebody would do that. Well, why would you leave? Why would you leave the United States?
Right. I mean, we even see this within the LGBTQ community also. Like we see people that they realize, okay, we may need to leave, but it is hard. Like I always kind of give this image of scales, because I think for our family, we left so early because, we're already bilingual, like my husband and I were. We already, you know, have traveled a lot, have lived abroad. Like we're already pretty comfortable with the idea of leaving the US. Like it wasn't scary to us to leave the US. I mean, it took a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice, but we weren't ever at any point like scared we won't be able to be okay. We're just like, we'll be fine. And I recognize like other people might be as afraid as we are, but their fear of leaving the country might balance that out. Like the fear of the unknown, the fear of having to move somewhere, of learning a new language, of learning a new culture can also, it doesn't mean people aren't afraid of where they are. It just means that they have a balance of reasons that's different than my balance of reasons. Or maybe they have an elderly parent to care for, or a custody agreement, or whatever it is where they can't leave. So I always like to hold space for people. Like you could be as terrified as I am, but your family doesn't leave because you're just in a totally different situation than we were.
And those are valid as well. Whether people stay or go, it's valid. And so thank you for also just saying that. You've been so great. What were you going to say, Bob?
No, I think we talk about a lot about when the water gets too hot. We've used that before. It's literally a personal choice. Some people may choose to stay in and fight it out. Other people do have the right to make some changes. And let's say that we weren't dealing with this overarching, situation in our country that's, oppressive, and discriminatory and potentially life-threatening. Let's say we weren't dealing with that. People still have the right to move. So when people start gatekeeping and saying, no, you need to stay and vote against this next time. I'm over here in safe state. I'm over here in blue state or different country or whatever, but you people need to stay because otherwise, how are we ever going to vote this out?
Yeah.
Write me a letter and let me know how you're doing in a few months. There's no gatekeeping in this. If somebody wants to stay, fabulous. If somebody wants to go, fabulous. We should support either side of that. And that's what we're trying to do. But we're also trying to educate people to think beyond the 2 or 3 counties they've probably been in their life, the 2 or 3 states they may know. And there's a whole big world out there. I'm almost going to sing a Disney song. There's a whole big world out there. I don't have the rights and I don't want to pay for it. That you can go to, that people will embrace folks like you, that will have a better lifestyle. That is, I mean, as Americans, we are just grown up to always work, 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 work. The idea of taking August as a vacation month, the idea that,
Yeah.
4 hours of school, did you see all of our faces light up when you said 4 hours of school? Because we're like, yeah, that sort of difference in the culture that, the work shuts off at 5 and people go have their evenings. And I'm
Right.
like, that's great.
Exactly.
Y'all go have your evening. I'm gonna sit here and keep working.
Yeah.
That's ingrained in us. So to break that and go, people have a different way of life and they're okay and they're actually happier than we are with our head down working 4 jobs to pay the rent.
Yeah, and that's something I've had to kind of figure out as I'm trying to help people who are curious about moving. Um, I just have to in my head, like, everybody's different. We all have different motivations. We all have different needs. We all have different wants. And that is gonna influence what you do so much. Like my family, like I'm pretty minimalist. I'm pretty laid back. Like we fit into Uruguay really well because I didn't like the US, like keeping up with the Joneses, always trying to, like I drove a 2007 minivan up until I left. Like, we're just not, that's not our personality as people to like care about those kinds of things. So we fit in really well here. We didn't fit in the US. But like if somebody's coming from the US and they do like those things, I don't think there's anything morally wrong with liking those name brand items or wanting to have the newest car. Like I don't think that's wrong at all. I want to be like transparent with people. So I told people like I don't think you would like Uruguay. Like I think maybe people live smaller here. They live in smaller homes. We consume a lot less. So there's things. So I think that also like balancing. It's just all a balancing act, and no person can look at your situation and tell you what you should do. You have to evaluate your own situation completely too, like with eyes wide open, like no blind spots. Be very real with yourself. And I think once somebody makes that decision that is, hey, you know, I did this for my family and I determined it's the right thing to do for my family. I think if somebody is going to be critical of that, that is a really ugly thing to do. To make somebody feel bad about the choices that they're making because they're not the choices that you would make. And I mean, I've even seen this from within the movement, people getting mad. Well, you're leaving, you're abandoning the fight. And it's like, isn't our whole movement that you should be able to live the way you want to live? And now you're telling me that the way I'm choosing to live is not okay because it goes against your belief system? Like, how the irony, you know?
And that gets to the basis of all the isms out there. If we all are equal and we all have choices, well then that means my choice might not be as good as your choice. If we're all equal, that might mean that my privilege is not nearly as powerful as your privilege. I mean, it gets to the idea that we should all be equal under the law. We should all be equal. And
Right.
people read that and go, well, as long as I'm better. And if you're going to this church and I go to that church and you've made a different decision, well, then maybe my decision isn't the right one. It makes them question their worldview. And anytime you get somebody in that loop of questioning their worldview, what they will do is make the otherisms the bad people.
100%.
And what we're dealing with that is a microcosm within the community of LGBTQ, within the community of all the communities of who's got the rank, who's got the right decision, who's got the wrong decision. And what it should be is we've all made decisions for ourselves.
Yeah,
If we can
exactly.
just do that.
Yeah, and we all play a different role. If you talk to activists who have been working towards civil rights, I mean, since forever, they will always say everybody plays a different role and nobody's role is more or less important, but we all have a role to play. And so for me, I was like, okay, I found my role. Like we got here early, figured everything out, and now we're helping people who are coming now and shortening their, it took me 6 months to figure out like basic stuff. I mean, it just, when you're in a totally new place, like it just, even if there's not a language barrier, everything's just different enough that it's confusing and takes time. But the people coming now, I'm like, oh, do this, 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 this. Like their growth curve, instead of 6 months, they're like settled in 6 weeks. So that makes me feel like I'm doing my part, and any time that we're all down here just celebrating and walking down the street freely and having no fear whatsoever, I feel like that's the biggest middle finger to the conservatives in the US. It's like you've tried everything and we're still here enjoying our lives and being who we are. So
You talked about you use that word there, that fear. We had a conversation before, and I believe one of your children was asked, "What do they not miss about being in the U.S.?" What was that?
well, the question was from somebody who just moved here. She asked my 10-year-old, what do you like best about living here? And my 10-year-old's answer was, we don't do active shooting drills at school. And it kind of blew me away, like, because I never, my kids never mentioned that before. Like, it obviously, like, anytime there's a shooting or something in the US, like, my kids know about it. We have to talk about it, and there's some feelings and things, but they never really mentioned that that was something that was on their minds a lot. And so when she said that, I was like, really? And I think that it's kind of just probably a proxy for just her overall feeling of safety. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel unsafe at school. There aren't any knock on wood, Uruguay's never had a mass shooting. I feel safe walking down the street. I feel safe being trans, just, and I think all of that went into that specific example, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I don't know.
and we don't. None one on this call comes. Maybe Kimber does, but none of us come from the generation where we had active shooter drills, and your children. That's probably they did probably never say anything because it was just part of what they did. That was just part of something they did at school. So to hear my question was like, did they realize they probably didn't realize that other schools didn't do that in other countries. They just and they get there and they're finally like, wait, y'all don't do this?
Yeah.
It's it's like moving from Oklahoma to New Hampshire. Y'all don't have tornado drills? What's
Yes.
type of thing?
Yeah. When you're a fish, you don't realize the water, and even like loud noises or things after New Year's. Everybody here does like fireworks on New Year's, of course. And so after New Year's, every kid has a million of these things that you throw at the ground and they pop.
Yeah.
And I was in the park with my kids, we're rollerblading around, whatever, and I suddenly hear pop, 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 pop. And my gut reaction was like to get down. Like I started to freak out, like there's a gun. And then I look up and it's just like some preteens popping these fireworks, but nobody else had reacted like I was like, oh God, there's a shooter. Nobody else thought that even for a second, you know? So it just
There's
permeates your life.
there's a PTSD that you will have if you've lived through this. And I ran into some friends who had moved out of Dallas and we hadn't seen each other in a year or two. I feel when I meet new people, I'm trauma dumping on them because I'll ask who I am and why I did and who whatever. And I have to explain 35 years of wait and being on the election every 2 years about my civil rights and whether I can be a legal person and whether I can deal with the Proud Boys being at our I just feel like I'm like trauma dumping on them. And they look at
Yeah,
me like, well, maybe we don't want to be, you know, it's like they try to understand, but they don't get it. When I ran into these two people who had been, it's like we had an encoded language. We understood each other. We knew those triggers that you're talking about when you hear a loud bang, you're like, crap. You know that when you're sitting in a restaurant, you know that, you know, half the purses in the room probably have a concealed weapon in them. And if grandma kicks that purse too hard, you could be in trouble at Luby's. That
right.
sort of stuff is just normal to them, normal to
Yeah,
us. You know, you walk into the parking lot and you expect 2/3 of the vehicles to be lifted trucks with bumper stickers on the back telling you who they hate. That
right.
and when you walk around the neighborhood and you don't have a lot of cars or all the vehicles you have are moderate little sized sedans and everybody's just when you have that lack of in your life, you're like, wow, other people live like this. If I get sick,
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about mortgaging my house.
Yeah, that's a
If I
big one
walk
too.
into if I walk into an area, I don't have to worry that everybody's got their pew pew in their back pocket. Oh my God, there's a world out there like that. But we're told all the time not to expect that this is the best we can ever do.
Yeah, on that vein, in that vein, you know, here is basically free healthcare. If you're comparing it to the US, basically free healthcare. I always say my daughter was in the ICU for 5 days and the final bill was 11 US dollars. So basically free healthcare. Very high quality healthcare too. And then public transit that's also close to free. And so the thing that I was telling my friends, my husband and I are very big savers. Like we're very, very frugal, cautious people when it comes to finances. So we have always saved a lot. We've always lived on way less than we made in the US. And we never had an amount of money that we felt safe with because we always felt like, okay, if we have a major medical emergency or you lose your job for an extended period of time, or if the economy, whatever, all of these things that could happen, we could lose everything that we worked really hard to save, you know, in a moment, like with one stupid decision or, you know, some car wreck, whatever. So here, the fact that, okay, even the poorest person, the unhoused person on the street still has health care, like can still go get their medical needs met. Like we still have transportation. It's like, okay, we look at each other, we have to pay our rent, our bills, and food. And if we can cover that, we can exist here. And so we have a lot less impetus to like hoard all of this wealth because we're just like, yeah, we're gonna be fine. Because like we have decent jobs and that pays for our bills and we're fine. And we're not gonna get some crazy out of left field emergency cost that totally derails our entire thing. And then university is free here and automatic admission. Like if you sign up, you're in. So I mean, like it's university. Like you'll quickly be weeded out if you're not university material, but that exists. And so even like future looking forward, we're like, oh, we don't have to be like psychotic about saving all this money for college because our kids could go for free. So that all of that, like off of your mind, frees up just so much space to just exist and find like hobbies again and like enjoy your life with other people. Um, I that's probably why everybody here is so chill. And the pot being legal too, that might have a lot to do with it. But
Everyone's so happy.
Uruguay. Hold on.
Yeah,
let me-
I'm like, wow, it sounds real great there.
I'm just happy, free healthcare. I could be high whenever I want. I saw a man roll a joint in front of a cop, like, and I was kind of like, "What's happening?" And it's like, okay, yeah, I forgot. This is the first country that completely legalized it in the world. So yeah, it's you can grow
That's a
it.
good
I could grow
history
it on my
fact.
balcony. I could just have it growing here, and nobody would care.
Free healthcare.
Free healthcare,
In every way.
everybody's chill, everybody's got access to whatever they want to, I mean, great. Yeah.
It's nice. Yeah, yeah.
So I was having
It's
this
interesting when
conversation.
you're in a, go ahead. It's
Go ahead.
interesting when you're in a community that doesn't stigmatize that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Not at
So
all.
sorry,
It's-
Leslie, go ahead.
So I was having a conversation yesterday with people about that have left the U.S. but are still coming back, and their fears about, oh my gosh, I've got to come back for this. What's going to happen to me? They were born in the United States. They're still citizens of the United States, but they do have a fear right now of coming back, to the point of, burner phones and laptops and things like that, and just not saying, hey, I'm coming back to people. You're about to come back for the Expatsi conference.
Yeah.
What are your feelings on that?
I'm certainly really nervous. You know, I have had enough encounters with Border Patrol to know that like they really can do a lot to ruin your day. They have a lot of leeway to be jerks. I'm not obviously I wouldn't come if I thought I was going to end up in a gulag, right? I don't think we're there yet. I'm not ruling it out. I am definitely looking at this as like maybe the last time for a while. Um, I am just looking at it like I have some fail safes. Like if they detain me just to be jerks, that's fine. It's not going to ruin my day. If as long as they don't detain me for more than a day, I'll be okay. But yeah, it is really unfortunate to think like this, but it people have been dealing with this too before Trump. Like actually, this is not even that political because I had a friend who traveled the world and he went back years ago and he was detained and they were like, why have you been out of the country for over a year? That's a red flag, you know? And so I'm kind of like, yeah, coming from South America, I have a Latino name, last name. um, in the red flags are waiting for them to be able to stop me. So I'm just gonna be careful and try to present myself. Usually being friendly works pretty well, but we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I thank you for being honest and coming on the podcast with us, showing us a bit of where you live and giving people some education and some ideas. Is there anything you want to leave people with?
I think my biggest advice, so I'm planning several panels for the Move Abroad conference with Expatsi. Like I'm talking about moving to Uruguay. I'm doing one on moving with children. I'm doing obviously the one with you, LGBTQ plus issues. I feel like most of my advice comes back to everything is figure outable and you're probably overthinking it most of the time. Like it will probably be okay. So my example is, you know, when people travel with kids on airplanes, I will see in my travel groups, people will just be so oppressed. Like this is what do I buy? I need to buy all these things so that I can make my kid comfortable on this flight. And I'm so nervous. What should I do? What should I do? What do you do if this happens? What do you do if that happens? And I'm always saying, you know, it ends, the plane lands. Like it's a few hours. Worst case scenario, your kid screams their head off the whole time and everybody's miserable, but they're only miserable for like a few hours and then the plane is going to land. Like you'll survive And after it, you will still be alive. The kid will be alive. Like everybody will be fine at the end of the day. And so sometimes you just have to embrace the suck. Like this, that's what I think maybe why my kids are pretty resilient with this move. Cause I'm just like, yeah, sometimes things suck, guys. What do you want me to do about it? Like, yeah, we're in this airport. Our flight got delayed. We're laying on the floor. And, that's life. So I don't know if that's like good advice or not. Like you might be miserable for a bit, but you get it figured out and then you're fine. And like we're here, with friends and a full social calendar and everybody's okay. You know what I mean? And that's the main thing is like just keep going and figure it out and don't worry so much. It'll be okay.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for being here. Tune in next time. We're going to have more guests talking about Flee Red States and just educating people on places that they might feel safer if they want to immigrate. Take care.